All right, back here at Sawgrass Marriott Golf Resort and Spa, live from the Players Championship, and joining me, one of the leaders in our industry, Dave Phillips. Appreciate your time, Dave.
You got it. Thanks for having me.
And you talk about golf instruction. I've been doing this a long time, not as long as you have, but bringing golf instruction and the fitness world together. You guys were really the first to do this at the Tyler's Performance Institute. And this has been like now 15, 16 years?
It has, yeah. We started TPI in 2004.
Wow.
We've been really fortunate in that, back then we got to test a lot of the great players and see how they moved. And that's really been the premise behind what we've done, is that we've created an education platform. We have 22,000 TPI certified guys in 62 countries around the world. And they're designed to basically look at your body, see how it moves, and then relate that to the golf swing. So for those players that feel pain after a round of golf or are struggling getting better at golf, sometimes it's just the way you move.
Yeah.
And so what we try and do is figure out how they move first, and then we go from there.
It's a holistic approach.
It is a little bit,
in the PGA Tour, but also, it can be down to the amateur level. And I think you guys got the golf instructors talking with the coaches, talking with the trainers, talking with the doctors, and everybody kind of started talking the same language.
That's right.
And then we could all kind of start moving people in the same direction.
You're right.
Right?
You're
Where
right.
they're going to play pain-free golf, and that's the key. So I want to talk to you about, one of the players that you're working with here. It's in the field at the Players Championship. Many people don't know this, but you started working with John Rahm when he was a young player there at the Tyler's Performance Institute, but in particular yourself, he would come over with the Spanish Federation.
Yeah, he would. So, we were fortunate, the Spanish Golf Federation, we did a lot of work with TPI with them and educating their golf professionals, and they send a lot of their young players to college in America, and John was one of those. We got to look at John when he was about 17. He always had a great golf swing. Inherently, he was a little tight in the hips, a little tight in the shoulders, and that's why his rotations are fairly small, but he keeps that club nice and wide, has a lot of set in his wrist. And what we really did is build a team around him that lets him do what he already knows how to do. And I think that's so important in this day and age, is that you got to understand what you're good at, and then you got to make sure your body is functioning that way. And a lot of these guys on tour today, they're in different beds, different time zones, they're traveling a lot. It's really important they take care of this, because if this is functioning, they already know how to fire a motor program and swing the golf club.
Yeah.
If they're not swinging it right, it's usually because this isn't functioning.
So when we talk functioning, let's talk hips and shoulders. I want to get up for a minute here.
Yeah, sure.
All right, let's talk mobility and give the viewers here something that they can take away, because shoulders, hips are critical in the golf swing.
They are. So, you see a lot of the players today that have great width in their backswing. So the first thing you want to do is you want to look at your shoulders. Quick test you can do is what we call the 90-90 test. Start standing and see how much rotation you have without arching your back. You should be able to at least match your spine. Then get in golf posture and see if you have the same thing. If you've got more than spine, that's good. You should still have that when you're in golf posture. If you're one of these that when you get to here you feel some tightness in the shoulder, then that's where you have to be a little bit careful, because what's happening is in your golf swing, if you try and get your arms up in the air, you're either going to lose your posture or you're going to get it from somewhere else. So the shoulder is a real important one, and it's a small capsule. It's kind of like a golf ball sitting on a tee, right? And basically what happens is the shoulder joints the golf ball, and it's on this little capsule. There's a lot of little muscles around there we can get tight. So anything you can do to help your posture and pull your scapulas back. And then what I would do is the exercise. So a simple one would be to take a club like this, and I can simply put it behind my arm like so, and I can simply very slowly just start creating a little bit more rotation here, right? So just giving myself some resistance, do that 3 or 4 times on both sides, and you'll usually feel a little bit more mobility in the shoulder.
And that mobility, being able to do that, is going to help set the club.
It is. So to your point, like, if you're trying to get that club in this position at the top where your arm's supporting it, and yet you've got an arm that you're only like this, then those players that have tight shoulders, you're going to want a little bit of a shorter backswing with the club out in front of you. You're not going to want as long a backswing, which is fine.
That's good advice, though, because if you're locked up there, then you're going to traditionally need a shorter backswing.
You are, yeah.
Talk about this wrist with John.
Okay.
Right, and what that's all about in getting some flexion in that lead wrist.
Yeah, so there's multiple ways to do that. You'll see players like Dustin Johnson, John Rahm, that have a lot of bow to this wrist. John tends to have a very weak or more than weak grip where you just see one knuckle. So what he's doing is he's setting this wrist a lot on the backswing. He's putting it actually in a position early that a lot of players get in late. So even though you see different positions at the top of the backswing with the wrist cup, some are bowed, every golfer, every top player, and you know this, On the downswing, they immediately start to bow so that at impact they can get that club shaft leaning forward with an iron to compress the golf ball better. So it doesn't matter where you do it. Someone like Jon Rahm does it early and does it in the backswing. Dustin Johnson does the same thing. But there are players that have more of a cupped position, flat left wrist position. What matters is that somewhere you do it. So some players do it early, some players do it late.
All right, so let's talk hips now.
Yeah.
All right, let's get some hip mobility.
Got
You know,
it.
for a while, I think the message to the consumer was don't turn your hips in the backswing.
Yeah, that's a big mistake.
Turn your shoulders,
Yeah.
not your hips. We know that you got to turn your hips.
So here's the thing that I think most people don't realize is that when you're looking at tour players, right, their golf swings, believe it or not, are not built for power. They're built for accuracy. They already have power. They have great flexibility and mobility, right? So they're able to rotate their hips and their shoulders to create that separation.
Okay.
So that's why you hear this stabilize your lower body and coil against your upper body, right?
For most of you, that's bad advice.
For most of you, that's bad advice.
Yeah.
For most of you, you don't have that ability to separate like they do. So what you should do is you can lift the foot, you can mobilize, move the hip as much as you can. The big key in golf, this is the big difference between the elite, you know this, and the average player, is the best in the world. On the downswing, they always create space for the club. That's hip mobility. If you don't load the hip properly on the backswing, you don't load and shift the weight and create space on the downswing, it's very difficult to keep your wrist angles, which give you power, right? So big problem is, to me, you have to create space.
On the downswing.
On the downswing, it's a huge thing. And to me, I have an acronym for SPACE. If you want speed, power, accuracy, consistency, efficiency, you need space, right? Which is what great players have.
Good stuff. One of the best in the business, not just instruction, position, but body, right? Understanding the function of the body and getting it to move properly to allow you to get in those positions.
You got it.
Hey, Dave, thanks so much.
Always
Appreciate
good to
your
be
time.
with you.
All right.
Thanks so much.
Yep. Lots of good stuff to filter through there, shoulders, hips, but I love the 90-90 test, and I want to kind of build on that here this week in the 14 strong, and I'm going to use an 8-iron. And when you look at that 90-90 test, and he did it up here, standing up and making sure that you can externally rotate there first, and then doing it in golf posture, that's such an important movement in the golf swing to start getting the club on plane. But the one thing that I really like that he said is at some point, this lead wrist has to start to flatten out, right? Now, whether you do it going back or whether you start to do it coming down, this lead wrist has to start to flatten out. Bow, the term that you hear a lot is flexion, right? Pushing up, flexion, that would be extension. So you flex it out or bow it out. At some point, that lead wrist has to start to do that. So I've got my 8-iron here, and we're gonna go to the target line. And I'm going to set up here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start working my left wrist flatter or slightly bowed going back. All right, so I'm going to take it halfway back. Right, and at this point, my left wrist feels pretty flat. Feels pretty flat there. So I can take it halfway back, left wrist pretty flat. As I hinge it up to the top, I'm already feeling my left wrist pretty flat. Now, if I'm up here flat, well, you could argue that helps keep it flat coming down. And then from there, as I go to face on here, that helps keep it flat at impact. And we want a flat left wrist at impact or even bowed. That gets the shaft more forward, de-lofts the face, right? It's gonna help the club face start to swivel and square up. Now, if I take the lead wrist and I take it halfway back, and at this point it feels a little cupped, right? I feel a little cupped right here, or a little extended in the lead wrist. I could take it up to the top. My left wrist right now is cupped. It's extended. I could carry that left wrist down cupped, not recommended, and still get it as I go to face on to flat at impact. That's a lot of heavy lifting. There are players that do that, have very gifted hands. Phil Mickelson, Mark Leishman. But you really want to start working that lead hand. If it's cupped at the top, you want to start flattening it out in transition, right? See how I did that? I started to flatten it out in transition, and you can see the effect on that club face. Look at this, extended. My left wrist right now is cupped. That shaft is more vertical. That face is open. That's tough. Now watch. I'm going to start to flatten it out, and you can see how that shaft shallows out, and look at the face. It starts to rotate down. right? So that is a move that you see with the better players. And I love the way that he phrased it. At some point, your lead hand has to start to flatten out. It has to start to bow. Now, one of the words that I'll use a lot is curl. Your lead hand. Start to curl these bottom 3 fingers. Let's go back to face on. Get in here tight here. These 3 fingers right here. Start to curl them under it like this, right? Here's cupped. Here's bowed, right? I start to curl these 3 fingers underneath. So if I go back to address and I take it halfway back, so I can feel those 3 fingers right now starting to curl underneath, right? That helps keep the face square. I go up to the top, hinge it. I'm starting to curl those 3 fingers. I'm going to bring it down. I'm starting to curl those 3 fingers. Feels like I'm kind of rolling them underneath. I'm going to go to impact. I feel those 3 fingers from face on. I'm rolling those 3, curling them underneath. And I keep doing that, turning down to post impact, kind of a la Jordan Spieth. Look at that, right? So I like that, curling those 3 fingers, kind of rolling them up under, bowing. At some point, we got to get this lead wrist to flatten out, to bow. Whether you do it going back or you're doing it coming down, it's going to have a huge influence on the shaft, and it's going to have a huge influence on the club face. All right, so let's go back to address here. One more time. Now, where does this external rotation, right, of this shoulder start to play in? As I take it to the top, here's 1, and I go up to 2, this feeling of the elbow, right, pinching in, pinching towards the left, starts to bend that right hand back. Starts to encourage that left hand to flatten out. If I went this way and my elbows were apart, then I would start to cup that wrist, right? So here's 1, here's 2. I'm going to pinch, right elbow's pinching the left, and I'm starting to curl that left hand, flatten it out. There it is at the top, beautiful position. Same thing coming down, right? Now, if you're tight there, as he said, we need to work to try to get that a little bit better, or you simply are going to start to shorten it up a little bit, right? Your swing's probably going to get a little bit shorter. There's some other options there, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But for right now, it's probably best just to shorten that up and really work on this movement in the shoulder. So I like this external rotation that he talked about in the shoulder, right? And even doing that on both sides, and how that really supports what we're trying to do with the club face. Left hand, got that curl in the left hand, got the feeling of that curling up here. It's flat or it's bowed. We're working that down. We better start getting there here, close here at delivery, and we certainly better be there at impact. Look at that, at impact, boom. Right elbow bent, right wrist bent, left wrist flat, left wrist bowed. And if we improve upon that, now we start to flight the golf ball down. And those golf shots just get a whole lot more solid on the club face. I love that interview with Dave Phillips. I love what he was talking about with the right shoulder, and I really love what he was talking about, how that left hand at some point better start curling, better start flattening out and bowing as you get to that impact position. And the sooner and the better you do it, well, I think your ball striking is going to improve. Great 14 strong. Thanks so much for Dave Phillips. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you liked it. And remember, leave a comment if you have any questions. And most importantly, subscribe right here to Travis Fulton Golf so I can help you with your game long term.